Ladies and gentlemen, you watch Corridor 8 podcast. Today's topic is United or Divided Cyprus, Problems and Solutions. And we have the pleasure to make a discussion with Fezile Osum from Cyprus. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me today for this podcast.
You are a PhD candidate and researcher in the University of Lancashire, and you are engaged with human rights movement in Cyprus. So we would be really honored and delighted to have your views and your experience shared with our audience. Thank you very much, Fezile, for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fezile. Once again, it's really an honor for us to have you in this podcast. And for a start, could you briefly explain the complex history of the Cyprus problem, which has persisted for over 50 years?
Yes, unfortunately. So, yes, it's a very detailed, long history of disagreements and internal conflict, but I will try to make it brief here. So Cyprus has been under different rules throughout the history, Ottomans and then the British rule we had, and had the two main communities, the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriot communities. And when we got independence from the British colony in the end of 1950s, we then formed a united state, which is the Republic of Cyprus. And the founder communities are the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots. And this state, the Republic of Cyprus, is still in charge today. Still, it's the only internationally recognized state in Cyprus. And it's an EU member state today. In 1960, when we formed this united state, it could only last, unfortunately, for 3 years. And the reason is that even before forming this state, there were these nationalist sentiments in both communities. Mainly in the Greek Cypriot community, it was the idea of enosis, which is to become a part of Greece, which Turkish Cypriots historically firmly rejected. And as a response to this idea, the Turkish Cypriot, especially the nationalist sentiments in the top community, introduced this idea of Taksim, which is division, partition of the islands, because they did not want to become a part of Greece. And in 1963, why the ethnic conflict has started that year is that because at the end of that year, the president of the republic has made a proposal which would change the power sharing agreements between Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots in that state. And most importantly, which would reduce the veto power of Turkish Cypriots, which was very important for Turkish Cypriots in decision making because their population has been, back in the times, it was only 18% of the island. So having this sort of power in the decision making was important for them to feel secure. So when these proposals were made, it was later followed by some attacks on some Turkish Cypriots by Greek Cypriot nationalists. And then this triggered the conflict. 63, 64, there was a lot of incidents in Cyprus, murders, some people taken to enclaves, taken as hostages, houses burned, and everything. So we had a lot of different sort of crimes. And then this situation, this ethnic conflict remained until 74 when Turkey's military intervention took place. And of course, by no means I want to provide an objective history as much as I can. It doesn't mean that in 63, 64, the Greek Cypriots were not hurt at all. But we can say that Turkish Cypriots were in a more disadvantageous situation. And also in 63, after these tensions, the Turkish Cypriots had to leave the Republic of Cyprus, so leave their positions in the Republic. And then in 1974, what happened is that we had a junta in Greece, and then Greece had a military intervention in Cyprus. They came, and it was a major threat to the Turkish Cypriot community, and we had the emergence of this EOKA B group, which is a very far nationalist group amongst the Greek Cypriots that did not want Turkish Cypriots to have any power in the decision making and wanted to kind of get rid of them, and wanted only Greek Cypriots to have the role to say in the decision making. So after a few days of this junta, Turkey had its first military intervention in Cyprus. This military intervention is a very divisive moment for Cyprus history. While Greek Cypriots and much of the international community accepts this intervention as an occupation, the Turkish Cypriots and the Turkish side has formally tried to explain this to the world as an operation, as a military intervention based on Turkey's guaranteed powers in Cyprus, and the aim was to restore the public order in the islands. However, today we see that public order that needed to be established under the Republic of Cyprus is not established by this intervention. And in 1974, when this incident took place, a lot of Greek Cypriots had lost their family members, as well as Turkish Cypriots, of course. But in 1974, we see a lot of massive war crimes and human rights violations, like in the time. Murders, rapes, tortures, arrests, forced disappearances, etc. So, and then the island since 1974 is divided. In the northern part is the Turkish Cypriots, in the southern part lives the Greek Cypriots. And in 1983, Turkish Cypriots, while living in the north, they declared independence, and they announced their own state, which is the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. In short, it's TRNC. However, this state has not been recognized by any other state except Turkey, and it was firmly denounced in UN Security Council resolutions, even back then, very quickly by the international community. And since then, none of the states have recognized TRNC, which means Turkish Cypriots have been living under a lot of embargoes, barriers, challenges to do anything basically in the north, like trade or any other kind of agreements, and has grown to be more and more dependent on Turkey. And this is what we see today in the north. More and more dependence to Turkey, Turkish politics, Turkish economics, and everything. So I will leave it there for now, but if you have any follow-up questions, I can provide more details. But yeah, this was just a brief explanation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Georgi, would you like to continue, or do you want me to continue with another one?
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, very interesting and sad story, unfortunately. And would like to ask you, what do you see as the main turning points in the negotiation process, particularly the collapse of talks in 2017? What were the key reasons for their failure, in your opinion?
Yes, this is very important, I think, to understand today as well about Cyprus' state of affairs. We had two major turning points after 83. First one was in 2004 with the Annan Plan referendum. We were very close to a peace deal with Greek Cypriots and between Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. But after that referendum, it was a referendum held for a peace plan drafted under UN's coordination. And it was accepted by more than 60% of Turkish Cypriots, but rejected more than 70% of Greek Cypriots. And then the second turning point that we had was in the Crans-Montana negotiations 2017. So we had a round of negotiations between 2015 and 17, and the end was in Crans-Montana, which was a very high-level kind of a negotiation. We were very close to a deal. Although the nature of the Cyprus problem unfortunately doesn't allow us to see what are the exact reasons for this failure, because unfortunately the Cyprus issue has been dealt behind closed doors in these 50 years. UN was always kind of involved in the process, facilitating, coordinating different UN's good offices, UNFICIP, the peacekeeping operations of the UN. They were always a part of the process, but regarding the public transparency, it was always problematic. And this is one of the, I see it as one of the biggest challenges of the Cyprus issue, which really prevents us to engage with the process that well. But I can tell you what the sides have said after the collapse of this process. According to the Turkish Cypriot side, their leadership, it was announced that the Crans-Montana process was collapsed because of Greek Cypriots, because they did not want to accept the political equality in decision making with Turkish Cypriots, which is a very important element for us. And actually, it is why in 60s the conflict started anyways, because there was always this sentiment in the Greek Cypriot society that Turkish Cypriots are minority, so they shouldn't have that sort of rights. They should have kind of minority rights. But Turkish Cypriots were one of the founders of that republic, and still is today, but by constitution, is one of the founders of that state, and always rejected this and always found it dangerous, and always asked for political equality historically. So the Turkish Cypriot side said that, again, that was the reason for the deadlock. Whereas the Greek Cypriot side rejects this and says that this wasn't the problem. The problem was Turkey's military presence in the island, and because Turkey did not want to remove all its troops from Cyprus and wanted to have the guarantor powers remained in the United Cyprus and their right to military intervention unilaterally. So this is what the Greek Cypriot side is saying. It wasn't because of any conflict with Turkish Cypriots, but rather Turkey's extensive interests, strategic interests in the island. And this is also one of the debates, I think. I think one of the most important is always security when it comes to Cyprus issues, for sure. And today we have in the north, more than 40,000 Turkish soldiers and a lot of bases and troops. And what's gonna happen with this after the solution? Are they gonna leave entirely? Are they gonna remain? Will Turkey have some sort of a base? Like the British, because British left as a colonial power, but they have bases in Cyprus in really good locations, and they use it very frequently. So this security is very important, but the other very most challenging is, of course, the political equality, because the Turkish Cypriots have always prioritized this, and I also personally don't believe that without these two particular elements being solved, any sort of solution, even if we approve it, it's not going to last, because security is the main concern of Greek Cypriots, because they have gone through 74 and they have lived the war. But for Turkish Cypriots, historically, the main issue is having that political equality. And, the current framework, UN agreed framework in Cyprus, is a federal model, which aims to establish this political equality by establishing this federal state, basically. And I think that it's one of the ways to ensure that sort of equality, and other kind of method may not work.
Fezile, you mentioned the federal model, but right now we see two very different political visions. Mr. Tatar, the president of the Turkish Cypriot community, supports a two-state solution, while Mr. Nikos Christodoulidis, the leader of the Greek part of the community, backs a bicommunal federation. So if there are two opposing views expressed by two leaders, how these views shape the prospect for a resolution? And is it possible to have a resolution which could be both suitable for the Greek and Turkish community?
Yes, actually, currently, this is the case. So we have long negotiated for a federal state, again, a model that is approved by the international community largely. And many of the experts in this field also agree with that model. However, currently, I think we are in a stage in Cyprus that we are in one of the dark times when it comes to peace efforts. It's very negative, it's very dark, and things are getting more and more tense. And many people are actually worried. It's getting tense because of different reasons. First of all, we have currently a Turkish Cypriot leadership that wants to change all this paradigm of the federal state. And actually, the current Turkish Cypriot leadership is very much backed by Ankara, by Turkey. And there had been very strong allegations that he was actually elected with Ankara's support. And without that, he wouldn't be able to. He had a very slim victory while having these elections with a pro-peace leader back in the times in 2020. And Turkey has increased its influence in the islands and has increased its pressure on the elections and everything. So this is a fact, I think, that we should bear in mind. Secondly, what current leadership is proposing is basically leaving the Greek Cypriots with no means, because the current idea is that I sit on the negotiation table, says Turkish Cypriot leader, only if they recognize me as a equal political sovereign state, which will never ever happen. Which we all know that the Greek Cypriots, even without sitting to a negotiation table, will never accept such a thing, because the Greek Cypriot side has always been firmly against recognition of this entity and always lobbied and still lobbies for against that sort of step. So that's impossible. So what he's actually proposing is something impossible, which means it's been years that there are no formal negotiations going on at the moment. What the Greek Cypriot leadership is doing, on the other hand, is basically voicing what the international community likes, what the international community approves. So the Greek Cypriot leader is currently in a very comfortable position because the Turkish Cypriot demands at this point is beyond reasonable. It's not for finding a solution, but rather creating kind of a deadlock in the system and basically showing to the world that negotiations and solution will never take place. And that means no solutions for Cyprus, and basically pushing the international community to recognize TRNC. This is his strategy. And he has tried in multiple occasions for TRNC to be recognized as a separate state, but no other state has recognized it yet. So very different views. I don't think the current Turkish Cypriot leadership really wants to find a solution. So, and yet we don't have negotiations. And we have, the Turkish Cypriot community will have the elections in 1 month, leadership elections. And now it's election campaign period. We will see what kind of a leader will be elected in these upcoming elections. And we will also see how much Turkey will intervene this time again. It's a very crucial moment for Turkish Cypriot community because many people have been traumatized from the last round of elections in 2020 because they did not expect this sort of intervention from Turkey.
Yeah, well, very interesting. And in this case, as a follow-up question, would you say that Cypriots today, both Turkish and Greek Cypriots, are hostages of their so-called motherland's interests?
I think for the North, for the Turkish Cypriot community, this is becoming more and more the reality, unfortunately, especially from the Transmontana process and onwards with the collapse of the negotiations. Turkey has massively increased its influence, and it's basically influencing not only the solution process but everything to do with the Turkish Cypriot cultural and social way of life. Cyprus problem is only one of that, but Turkey has been also intervening in the education system of Turkish Cypriots, into their central bank and their other sort of laws, policies, social welfare system, religion. So Turkey is really, really increasing its power. And because of the ongoing embargoes and control over the north, the Turkish Cypriots have no other option but to be more and more dependent to Turkey, because they cannot be independent, they cannot do trade, they cannot be financially or socially independent at like in any space at the moment. It's not possible. They are under harsh embargoes. When it comes to the south, I don't think Greece has that much influence on Republic of Cyprus anymore. And I think Republic of Cyprus, taking the advantage of being an EU member state for many years now, has increased its capacities in many, many different levels in society and in politics, and has also developed its infrastructure, its schools, and also its political identity as an EU member state. I don't suggest that Cyprus is entirely independent from Greece. That I think, will never take place in the close future. And for international security issues and international politics, they are very much hand in hand. But I don't think that the level of dependency can be even compared with what Turkish Cypriots are having with Turkey. And so in Turkish Cypriots and Turkey relations, it's a much more hierarchical relation, Turkey imposing on Turkish Cypriots most of the times. Whereas with Greece and Greek Cypriots, I see much more equal footing in when they have to do a decision about international relations. So I don't think it's the same, but definitely Greece and Turkey has a lot of power, a lot of influence across the island still. That didn't change.
I see. Georgi?
So I was wondering if there are such external actors with such big influence on in the political societal life in Cyprus, what could be done on a local level in order to improve in a certain way the daily life of the people and so what could be done on the ground? And I was thinking about the informal Geneva meetings that were held in March 2025. So during these meetings, such practical agreements were done, especially about crossing points and demining. So it's something that could improve the communication, the contact zone between the Turkish and the Greek communities. But do you think that such confidence building measures, trust building measures are really meaningful? Especially since there is a lack of a political progress.
Yes, I think these confidence building measures, I mean, as someone who born and raised in Cyprus, I can really say that they can be life-changing for Cypriots, especially for Turkish Cypriots. I can say for my community specifically. Let's say the checkpoints. For people who don't know, Cyprus is divided and there is a UN-controlled buffer zone in between, but crossings are possible at the moment. There are designated crossing points, checkpoints, that people can go, show their IDs, and cross to the other side. That before 2003, we didn't even have that. It was entirely closed. And in 2003, we had this opening of the checkpoints. And since 2003, we had more and more checkpoints open across the island. Currently, there is a massive need, for instance, in the capital, in Nicosia, to open new checkpoints to allow people to have easier access to the other side, because with the growing population and the cars and everything, now there are long queues to cross to the other side, and this makes it all inaccessible for people in their daily life. However, in the last informal meetings you mentioned, there were very important decisions made to open some checkpoints which would address this problem, actually. However, these decisions were taken and they were positive, but later on, until like it's September now, it's been months and no checkpoints have been opened. I mean, the decision was made and no checkpoints have been opened, which means currently in, let's say, Nicosia, in the capital, if a Turkish Cypriot wants to cross to the south on a daily basis, they need to spend at least 1 hour per day for queuing in the border, in the checkpoints. So it's very challenging, and it's also a humanistic need, because people are also, we have a lot of intercommunal relations at the moment. People work on the other side, they send their kids to schools, they get treatments in the hospitals, and so they have, it's a part of their daily life. Many people use the opportunities in the south, Turkish Cypriots. So now we had this agreement, but unfortunately, because of all this blame game between the leaders, we don't really know why the checkpoints were not opened seriously, because it's the first time ever that is happening in Cyprus, because even the most nationalist leaderships on both sides had introduced some sort of confidence building measures during their time as presidents. I mean, even the most nationalist ones, even Denktash, that is the one of the hardliners in Cyprus problem, the leader who introduced TRNC, established the unrecognized state in Cyprus, a Turkish Cypriot leader, even he himself introduced confidence building measures. So this is the only leader we have after so many decades. He is basically not doing anything for confidence building. And I think these checkpoints, and we also have other sort of confidence buildings on environment, on health, on different aspects of life that makes lives of people easier in Cyprus. I think on the societal level, they are very crucial, because this is how peace is built in everyday relations. But currently we see with the current leadership, this has become very, very difficult.
Yes, I see. And there is increasing apathy and economic frustration on both sides. Greek Cypriots focused on cost of living pressures, Turkish Cypriots disillusioned with Ankar's influence, as you already mentioned. How does this affect the peace process and the public's willingness to engage?
Yes, actually, economics and general economic well-being of a society is very important in peace-building efforts, I think. When one side is having significantly lower economic capacity compared to the other side, then peace negotiations are very difficult. And in the past, 1 decade ago even, or 2 decades ago, Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots did not have that sort of an economic inequality. But currently, because of the economic crisis in Turkey, you may know, it's not handled properly, and it's going on for years now. Very high inflation, unemployment has started to widespread, loss of value. The Turkish money has lost a lot of value, and the Turkish Cypriots still use Turkish lira today. This has had very traumatic and very, very crucial influence in Turkish Cypriots' lives, especially young people. Whereas in the south, yes, there are economic difficulties, but again, compared to the Turkish Cypriots, They are doing much better at the moment. And I read about World Bank's report, for instance, about the economic differences between the two sides at the moment. Because the World Bank does a lot of research on Cyprus and publishes reports, and they say that in some sectors the difference can go 9 times even. So to Greek Cypriots in some tech sectors in the market, they're doing 9 times better than Turkish Cypriots. I mean, it's a crazy gap. It's unbelievable. It wasn't like that before. So this is, I think, one of the challenges of this peace process as well. Greek Cypriots basically, as the time passes, they have lower and lower motivation for peace. Yes, currently it's the Turkish Cypriot leadership who seems to be blocking this process. But I think Greek Cypriot society and the political leadership has not been prioritizing Cyprus for a long time, Cyprus peace process for a long time now. And they have their reasons, because they're an independent EU member state. They have a lot of contribution from the EU, and this allowed them to develop a lot in terms of their infrastructure. And they are scared that this may change with a solution if they say yes to unite with a side that is economically doing really bad, has a lot of corruption allegations, and plus has the Turkish influence. And they're scared about this, and I understand to one extent. And here I think one of the reasons why this has turned into something like this sort of differences, is EU and EU's positioning on Cyprus, because the EU has accepted Republic of Cyprus regardless of their internal conflict situation in 2004, and this has created Republic of Cyprus to have much more power, autonomy, and independence, which made them lose the motivation and prioritize this, because why would they? So I think this is partly a result of EU accession as well, although I am, like many people in my generation, would be thankful for EU accession, because it definitely made our lives easier on a societal level. On a bigger picture level, let's say, I can say that the EU's role on Cyprus has also triggered this deadlock. And this is why we are in this sort of uncertainty today.
Yes, I see. Thank you, please.
Yeah. With such a growing apathy and frustration among the ordinary citizens, do you think that still there are people who are willing, I mean ordinary citizens, who are willing to actively participate in changing the situation, in the policy building and the policy creation? Is it possible for ordinary citizens to be re-engaged in the political process, so they could be part of this decision making, besides the political elites?
I think this is a very important aspect. I think the Cypriot civil society and activism has really grown after the Annan Plan in 2004. On both sides, I think the peace activism has grown, but also repeatedly prevented to have a major role in this process because of the nature of the peace process in Cyprus, as I mentioned in the beginning. If the civil society doesn't know anything about what is being negotiated, then people cannot really engage with the process. And this sort of, through time, I'm sorry to say this because I also come from civil society, this has made the civil society kind of irrelevant in all this process. Lose the power, lose the credibility, because we don't know anything. I mean, even the things about Transmontana, the recent collapse of the negotiations, the recent, I mean, 8 years ago, but still most recent, even that has been leaked and release the reasons after some time and very briefly. And even today, some of the people in the negotiations team leak some sort of information about this process, bits by bits. So even today, we try to understand what happened 8 years ago with bits by bits information. And this shouldn't be like this. I mean, the peace processes have changed a lot in all these 50 years. It's much more open now, transparent, civil society engagement is very much supported by the international community. But in Cyprus, both leaderships actually has never opened that door for civil society. I think civil society could have way more role, power, leadership in this process. But with a lot of disappointments and preventing them to have that role, the civil society has this fatigue, they're tired as well. So, I mean, I don't think that it's impossible to engage them to the process at the moment. I think if we decide to break that cycle and give more information to civil society and that the people would feel part of it, I think the civil society in Cyprus would be empowered very quickly and continue their work. But currently, especially after Transmontana, the civil society space is very hopeless, very weak, powerless at the moment, unfortunately. But again, I mean, while saying this, I'm not completely hopeless that this will not change. But I am just aware that with the right political ideas, I think we can trigger this spark again, and then allow it to have this domino effect, because it did happen in the Annan plan process. The civil society was very active and in the streets and everything. We had a concrete peace plan, very like hundreds of pages. People knew what to discuss. They were discussing every page, and civil society was very engaged. But that wasn't the case afterwards in any of the negotiations or Transmontana.
I actually admire your optimism. I hope that you're right. And actually, you've been involved in the bicommunal technical committees since 2008. Could you tell us more about their work in education, health, environment, culture?
Yes, actually, these technical committees are very unique, I think. Also in the literature regarding frozen conflicts and conflicts in general. These are technical committees established by the under Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot leaderships with their common agreement on 12 different subject matters at the moment. And this involves very crucial topics such as crime and criminal matters, which is established in 2008 and currently facilitates the police cooperation between Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. And then we have the health, we have cultural heritage, which allowed many mosques and churches across the island who were ruined after the conflict or left without any care to be renovated. We have gender, which is basically to influence the negotiations and introduce more a gender-centric kind of approach. I think Gender Committee has not been successful in doing that, but their presence is important. And then education, humanitarian affairs, and etc. So we have 12 technical committees. The reason why these are very unique is because the Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots had to collaborate in the island for different issues, for environment, for health, for issues that are needed to be addressed for our day-to-day life, that without bicommunal cooperation, that cannot be resolved. So this could not take place because of recognition phobia. So Greek Cypriots would never cooperate with TRNC authorities on any level, and they have a very firm idea against it because of the recognition phobia. Turkish Cypriots in theory also don't, like the formal discourse is that they don't recognize the Republic of Cyprus after Turkish Cypriots left it in 63 because they say the state has lost its nature. So we cannot recognize it without the Turkish Cypriots. But still Turkish Cypriots are much more okay, let's say, with collaboration with Republic of Cyprus, whereas for Republic of Cyprus it's a big no. So these technical committees, under the leadership of both community leaders and the UN auspices as well, they function and they allow also this sort of collaboration between civil servants to take place. They have done remarkable projects until today. For instance, not many Cypriots know about this, which is because they try to keep a low profile in the media because they are scared also of some nationalist reactions and everything. But I think they have done remarkable things, such as the Committee on Economics and Commercial Matters was in charge of addressing the power cuts, basically, in both sides. But in the south, in the Greek Cypriot community, there was a major accident some time ago, and there was a major power cut issue. We also in the north still today have power cut issues. So the committee have connected the electricity grids between the two sides. And with that achievement today, we continue to give electricity to each other without asking for any sort of money or costs. I think it's really life-saving. It can be life-saving for Cyprus because we help each other in that way. In the COVID times, thanks to the health committee, for instance, because Turkish Cypriots had a lot of difficulty accessing vaccines because of the embargoes and lack of diplomatic ties with anyone except Turkey. So we had a lot of challenges. But thanks to the health technical committee, we could get vaccines from the south, the vaccines that EU sent to the south, to the Greek Cypriot side. We could cross them, and Turkish Cypriots could be vaccinated with those vaccines, and there was very urgent need. And what else? Thanks to the Education Technical Committee, they run an amazing project called Imagine Project, which is an award-winning peace education project that went on very influentially for more than 4 years and gave peace education to teachers in the Greek Cypriot, Turkish Cypriot community, but also to children, regardless of their ethnicities in both communities. And it was seen as a major success. Unfortunately, it is currently stopped by the Turkish Cypriot leadership because they found it against the two-state solution proposal that they're making. So they find it dangerous, although the Imagine project had nothing to do with federal state or two states. It was just a peace education project. But yes, I can give even more examples about the technical committees, but I think what is unique about them is that they deal with the recognition issue, so they allow ongoing collaboration between two sides. I forgot to mention the crime and criminal matters, for instance, very important issue for Cyprus, because one could easily commit a crime in the south and then cross to the north illegally, and then just have impunity, because the south, the Greek Cypriot police, cannot arrest someone in the north because they don't have such power in the north, in the Turkish Cypriot community. Thanks to this committee, Crime and Criminal Matters, now both sides, police officers on both sides, collaborate with each other on a daily basis. They transfer information, give information to each other, and they even give suspects to each other. So this is a major step for addressing the impunity in Cyprus, because this Cyprus problem has caused a lot of problems in the past. A murder was committed in the south, and then the suspects fled to the north, and they never ever served a prison sentence. And this was the case 2 decades ago or 15 years ago. But now with the committee's work, these kind of issues are handled. So I think they're very important on many aspects.
Okay.
it is nice to hear that there are such good examples for collaboration, successful collaboration that improves the everyday life in Cyprus. Do you think that such collaboration or such specific cases that come from daily life can really build trust, or they're seen just as something that should be done in order to express willingness to collaborate, but not really trust building? And do you think that, according to your experience in the technical committee, that such work can really support the sustainable trust between the communities?
Yes, about the technical committees especially and all these activities that promote trust, I can say that because we have done a research with my supervisor, Nasia Georgiou, and it was an EU-funded research project on technical committees, and we interviewed technical committee members, co-chairs, and the different people, stakeholders that engage with their projects. So we have done a lot of empirical research. And from that research, I can easily say that I think it has a great contribution to the peace process, this sort of societal level cooperation on both sides. Because in the interviews as well, I have met with people who told me I had negative views about Turkish Cypriots or vice versa about Greek Cypriots, but with the technical committee work that I was assigned to, it changed my views and my professional life completely. And many of the members or co-chairs had positive experiences. Like, for instance, we asked them about how decisions are made in the committee, whether they had any problems with their Greek Cypriot or Turkish Cypriot counterparts, and we did not note any significant challenge between the communities on the community level. So, and this is going on since 2008. I think it's a very long time that this collaboration is going on via different technical committees, and there wasn't a major issue between the sides, and they're still very, very well handled. So I think this says something, and I don't know if ever in Cyprus history we have such an example anyway, that Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots collaborate on serious issues that impact their lives. Because we had the British colony back then, and then we had the Republic of Cyprus, which only ran for 3 years. So through these technical committees, we also gained this experience of collaboration, of this culture of bicommunal collaboration, and this self-confidence as well that we can do things together. So I think their role is great, the technical committee's role and all the projects that they're engaging with. And I see that, like, they always want to be low profile. They are behind the doors. Like they're not very, they're not in the media all the time, these technical committees, but people know their work because people have direct impact with their work. For instance, about the crossings as well, the leadership gives the decision to open, yes, but then it's the Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots in the crossings technical committee that does everything about the crossings opening when we're going to have a new checkpoints. They decide on how the crossings will be, where the controls will be and everything. So they are basically doing everything on the ground. So people know their work, although they don't know their names. And I think in both sides, they appreciate it.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And actually, there was a project for peace education called Imagine Project, but it was suspended by the current Turkish Cypriot leadership. So, what was the impact of this project, and what are the implications of its cancellation for future reconciliation efforts? And how could such efforts continue, in your opinion?
Yes, Imagine Project is a very, very important one, and it's like a scar. Seriously, it's a sad kind of incident. What happened to Imagine Project, because it was one of the biggest projects of the technical committees. Technical Committee on Education has done it, And we, under this research project, we specifically also held interviews with Imagine's stakeholders and people who were working for Imagine or who went for a training to Imagine. So Imagine was one of our focuses in this project. So I know in detail for that reason as well. They reach more than 1,000 students on both sides. I think 1,600, if I'm not mistaken, and then around 700 teachers, and they have done this peace education. And for some kids, for some children, for many of them actually, according to our research, it was the first touch, first contact with the other community. And we are talking about primary school kids here or secondary school kids. So it was very, very, on a humane level, it was a very important project. And many of them have reported, although they could have some negative stereotypes before, after doing these trainings with Imagine, they shifted their opinions. So this growing impact of Imagine, because Imagine project was going to schools on both sides, doing these monocommunal trainings, first in the schools, so they were going to their classrooms, and then bringing the kids together in the buffer zone for a common training. So Imagine through time, they started in 2000, at the end of 2016 and then 17, and it lasted until 2021. Their influence has grown, so they expanded every year, they expanded, and they had a lot of demand from schools as well. So this success has also created some good results. They got really good awards, and they had a lot of media attention and everything. But on the negative side, these positive, let's say, these achievements have made the current Turkish Cypriot leadership bothered and irritated, because I think they were aware of the influence of Imagine. So in 2021, suddenly Imagine projects started to be attacked in the Turkish media, first in Turkey by some nationalists in newspapers, and then after some months of these attacks, the lead Turkish Cypriot leadership announced that they're suspending Imagine program. So it was first verbal attacks and social media attacks for no reason to the Imagine project team, and then this suspension. And although many politicians have denounced this and condemned, nothing has changed. And since that day, unfortunately, we lost this program. Now Imagine program is still going on, but they in a very, very, very smaller scale. So they reach way less people, and mainly they can only do some things in the buffer zone. They cannot go to the schools anymore. They cannot reach the new kids anymore. So it's almost kind of partially dead. So the reason, I think, was that this influence was seen by the Turkish Cypriot leadership, which doesn't want this sort of bicommunal engagement and peace kind of negotiations, peace education at the moment. And I have seen very negative effects of this decision on the civil society as well, because the Imagine project was implemented under the Technical Committee on Education, under their coordination, but on the grassroots level, there was a NGO, Association for Historical Dialogue, which was the main actor in their implementation. And these people, these civil society people, of course, got very marginalized, tried to be very marginalized during this stage. And also other civil society actors were kind of feeling scared at some point. What if they also have some sort of problem in their activities? So it was like a domino effect on Turkish Cypriot civil society, especially because it was the first time that in the Turkish Cypriot community, that sort of intervention was seen on the civil society's activities, especially when a project is that successful and has no problems financially or anything. So it was the first time, and I think not only on Imagine and its team, but on wider on the civil society space, I have seen the devastating effect of this decision.
it's impossible to reach a sustainable peace and reconciliation without the will, the willingness, and the active participation of the political power of the political leaders. But what could be done really on a grassroots level by the citizens? And what do you think, under what circumstances new reconciliation projects could be reactivated or reimagined again?
Yes, I think it's very much hand in hand with the current political space. What's going to happen? So in 1 month we have the elections in the Turkish Cypriot community, very crucial elections, because we have lost a lot of time. And if we have kind of at least informal meetings starting between the two sides rather than formal negotiations, because I think expecting formal negotiations in a close feature now in few months, it's not very realistic. But at least if we can have this sort of informal meetings happening and people see that it's getting alive again, this peace process is it's moving somewhere again, then I think then can be the time for more and more people and civil society to be interested in this and to be more motivated to do something. Currently, as I said, it's very hopeless, and people, I don't think that they are prioritizing and they can prioritize the peace process at the moment, although they have been demanding it for so long. So I think there should be definitely grassroots level engagement with reconciliation efforts. I think we should have more grassroots leaderships. And I think hopefully if we have a leadership that can be ready to negotiate the Cyprus problem, we will see much more stronger civil society, much more motivated youth and everything. Because currently the youth as well is very disengaged from the process because of the economic difficulties, uncertainties in the region, etc. So I think, yes, the realistic kind of expectation can be some changes in the diplomatic level, and only then I think the grassroots will become alive again.
Okay. Well, others say that 95% of the Cyprus problem has been resolved, referring to six core areas: governance, territory, property, economy, EU, and security. If so much is agreed on, what exactly then is holding back the remaining 5%?
I mean, this is what our previous negotiators have said, the lead negotiators, Andreas Mavroyannis and Özdil Nami. They have been a part of negotiations for many years, and I want to believe what they said. But as I said in the beginning, many of us don't know in detail what is being negotiated. But I accept what they say as the truth, as the correct kind of statement. And I think the 5% is definitely the political willingness and the complication of the Cyprus problem, unfortunately, because Cyprus problem, it's never been Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot conflict only. It has been overwhelmingly the challenges, the conflicts, the interest conflicts, especially in the region between Turkey, Greece, and the UK. So we cannot deny this. Cyprus, although I would want to have an independent peace process, Cypriots to decide for their fate and everything, it's not really realistic. So I think that 5% comes from that complication of the Cyprus problem, that it's not only two sides, it's five sides. And there are different geopolitical interests in the region. I think one of the major issues is military security. How to resolve this in this very complicated region, especially these days. The security concerns have grown. So how do we solve this issue? Firstly, And secondly, again, I mean, I don't want to repeat myself again, but I know from the Turkish Cypriot communities reservations and fears that the political equality must be ensured somewhere. Unfortunately, I think life would have been easier for all of us in general if, for instance, Turkey would have much more democratic governance at the moment, would be on the path to EU accession, and everything would be closer to the EU. I think Cyprus problem would be easily resolved in that sense. But currently, that's also not the case. Turkey's interests have changed. Their way of doing politics have changed, and it's not very healthy at the moment, like democratic at the moment. So it's very much tied to Turkey's motivations as well. I mean, Turkey is a great power in the region. They have a lot of military, and I don't think that there can be any solution without Turkey being, a part of it and accepting it, like realistically. So I think Turkish interests should align with it, and then the other powers' interests as well.
So, realistically speaking, from your point of view, what could really happen in the next 5 to 10 years? What could be the minimum viable peace at the moment in Cyprus?
So, I mean, let's talk about different scenarios. If we have another 5 years with a leader that is not pro-peace, that means 5 years of deadlock again in the negotiations. That means more and more militarization on the island, more and more problems in the island, and no prospects for peace, at least a federal model peace. So if that is the case, which is kind of the dark scenario for me at least, then I think the embargoes and the TRNC will continue, and I think the leaders who come to rule TRNC would continue to promote its recognition, and maybe gradually through time, after decades, we will see more and more this to be discussed. Maybe we'll see 1-2 states, trying to recognize it and everything. This is an option for sure, but I don't think in the shorter term TRNC can be recognized. I don't think so. But in the long term, if this goes on like this, that may be an option. On the other hand, if we have a pro-peace leader that supports the federal model, currently we have two main candidates, the current leader and then the main rival, which is doing really good in the polls, the pro-peace leader at the moment, so we will see. So if we have this, then the negotiations can start again, and hopefully we reach to a federal model solution proposed to the communities, put into referendum and everything. And in that case only, I think Cyprus in the long run can be stronger, because we have the gas issues, in the Mediterranean. That problem as the years pass, that problem is growing as well. What we're going to do with that issue, that is the energy and geopolitical interests, very important. And secondly, economy-wise, a federal peace or a unification, let's say, would attract a lot of investors in Cyprus, I think, and economically Cyprus would have the chance to grow. And I think in the long run, the unification would do good for the island's future. But currently, I don't really think that in a few years' time we can have that sort of a peace deal. But at least having negotiations opened again would release some of the stress that Turkish Cypriots are currently having. Maybe we'll have more confidence-building measures. Maybe the Turkish Cypriots gradually may have less embargoes on them through different sort of agreements, and gradually the situation may change. But let's see which scenario will happen, because, as I said, it's very much tied with Turkey's interest as well. So, and everything can change very quickly, I think, when it comes to Cyprus, if the interests are saying that. But everything can remain inactive as well. So it's very, very unstable.
And since we are Balkan researchers, we can't help but ask you to be teleported a bit um, on the Balkans and compare with unresolved issues in Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and even Western North Macedonia because of how the situation develops there, and maybe ethnic Albanians could not be very happy with this development. So, from your viewpoint, from what you've seen in Cyprus, how do you see um, the risks in the Balkans? And when you look at the Balkans, what are the key challenges that we have to overcome in order to avoid the transformation of frozen conflicts into heat conflicts, in your opinion? And which successful and unsuccessful examples of the Cyprus problem solving we must have in mind?
Yes, I seriously have spent some time on Balkans because my master's was on former Yugoslavia. So I'm very much interested in the conflicts in Balkans for so long now. I see a lot of similarities with Cyprus. That's why I have been very interested from a very young age. And the ethnic division, the UN's presence in different parts of the Balkans, and then ongoing frozen conflict situation is very, very similar to Cyprus. Of course, it's not the same, but we have a lot of similarities. And I think the EU, I mean, except from the accession of Croatia, I hope the EU does not do the same mistakes that they have done in Cyprus, because as I said, the EU, when it comes to the Cyprus issue, I think has a lot of blame, and the EU officials today are accepting this. They are admitting this as well. I hope the same mistakes. I think the EU has learned that this is not the way to resolve a conflict. So if you accept one side to the EU and leave the other side like this, you create more and more divisions, more and more conflicts. I mean, I know from the EU officials, as I said from today, that they regret Cyprus. I mean, they regret the decision of Cyprus being acceded without finding some sort of a solution. And so I'm hoping that this will not happen in Balkans, because it's going to make things even worse. And the history shows it. Then the frozen conflict situation it's something that eats your daily life or your future and everything, and you spend so much time on it that it makes you to backslide in other things that you need to focus as a society. This is what also happened in Cyprus. And it's a never-ending blame game. This is what I see in the Balkans as well. It's a never-ending blame game, never-ending tensions. And of course, I don't have a formula to give, like what to do. It's a very big question. But I think that there should be, as much as we can do, there should be kind of open communication and ways to find compromises. In different countries in the Balkans, this may change forms, but I think we should never close the dialogue, be in that sort of dialogue, and get ready to address this frozen conflict and get rid of, hopefully, the political status quo that feeds this frozen conflict. That's very important, I think, because in Cyprus as well, the elites, politicians have done their careers based on this blame game, these conflicts and everything for decades. And I think what could be beneficial for Balkans is to break that cycle and basically hopefully to have some sort of demand for some politicians who can address finding some solutions to the problems rather than creating more conflict. I know there is a lot of external influence in some parts in the Balkans as well, and this is what we see too. The external influence is also very challenging. But I think, Balkans can learn a lot from Cyprus, especially the mistakes that has been done in Cyprus. And I think they are aware of this. And yes.
I think we reached the end of the topics that we would like to ask you today. But meanwhile, I noticed that there are some comments in the comment section from our viewers. Would you like to look at the comments? We could also comment the comments. Some of our friends on the chat are here. For example, from Istanbul, our friend Ergir Stumbov. He's member of the Bulgarian community of Istanbul. So he claims something from his observations, that without the membership of Turkey in the United Union, it's not possible to create one-state solution in Cyprus. Do you think it's possible to think in this dimension, that Turkey has to enter the European Union, and then it will negotiate, it will agree the solution of the resolution of the Cyprus problem?
Yes, I think Turkey's accession process to the EU is very important. I don't think that the full accession is needed to finding a peace, but if Turkey moves closer to an accession, and which is currently not at all the case, unfortunately, but if it moves closer, then I think it will open much more opportunities for Cyprus to have the peace and to finalize the process, basically. We don't have. I don't think that in that scenario we have to wait until full accession, but Turkey should be closer to the EU, should be closer to the Western allies for Cyprus problem to be resolved. I fully agree with that. Currently, that's not the case, and it's scary. It's also scary for the region. So Turkey should be on the way to the EU, and I think EU should also this time, if we have this kind of process with the EU-Turkey relations, I think EU should learn from their mistakes in the past and should be more supportive for Turkey's accession.
Thank you. And a comment from Vedernik BG. He wrote, "Hello, friends. Greetings to Fezile Osum." That's a very interesting discussion. Thank you, Vedernik.
Thank you.
One question to Ms. Osum. What do you think about the economic ties between Turkey and the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus? Is it possible for Turkish Republic to live on without Ankara's aid?
I don't think it's possible without any aid because of the embargoes and lack of recognition. But we have, in the past, as Turkish Cypriots, under good leaderships, we have managed to be more financially independent in the past. We reduced the financial control of Turkey with good governance. And that's doable, I think. However, currently, if you ask me with the current state of things, I don't think that's possible because Turkey has increased more and more its powers, and they basically don't want financial aid. I don't think that current Turkish leadership would want Turkish Cypriots to be independent financially. I don't think they would. They would really support it. I honestly don't think so. But with good leaderships on both sides, like both Turkey and Cyprus, I think this dependence can be reduced. Why not? Because yes, Turkish Cypriots, it's an unrecognized state, but they have different sectors that is functioning one way or another in the island. That has a lot of problems, but is functioning, like the education, the tourism, as producing some very good local stuff. So we have this sort of sector still running. I don't think it's completely impossible, but currently I don't think Turkey would allow such a thing.
Comment from Devil Jedi 666. She's on the Twitch. He wrote or she wrote. She is speaking so strongly, so it's a compliment about you. And a question: What will you think? What do you think about Greeks versus Turks?
I mean, what in what sense? I don't know the question is, but I think historically these two communities they have been living together under the Ottoman rule, for instance, so they have a common history, but also they had significant conflicts before in Turkey, in Cyprus. So I think cultural level they're very close to each other. In Cyprus, we with Cypriots, we are very close to each other. We have I can say that our common culture is different than Greece and Turkey. So it's not completely different, but we have a unique culture. So because we have been living together for decades, for centuries. So I think these two, if there is a good willingness, can go very well together, these two communities, for sure. And they're very similar to each other.
Recently, I listened to a podcast with a lady, Melbourne-born lady. I think it's called Mrs. Simmons or Simons, not sure. And he has origins, her roots from Cyprus. All the time she was speaking about Cypriot identity. No matter if she is Greek and some other people are Turkish, the ethnicity is something else, but there is a sense of Cypriot identity. This is what I noticed in her speech and her expressions during the podcast. So some more political from Ergir Stumb of Istanbul. Can you explain the Russian interests on the island, both sides? And also he wrote, much of the criminal money from Serbia in the 90s of the last century was transferred to Greek side of Cyprus. Did anybody knows about any serious investigation for this money? So foreign money, not just Turkey or Greece. We already discussed the very important role that the two states play on the island. But what about Russia and close to Russia states like Serbia and others? Their investments, their money laundering, etc.
Yes, I mean, it goes seriously, these two questions are related. We have growing Russian interests on the islands. We also have growing Israeli interests on the island, which are now new dynamics for Cyprus. So, in a classic sense, in a traditional sense, we know the major powers, Turkey, Greece, and UK, historically had interests and ties in the islands. But now, for a decade or so, now we see new powers having interests on the island, which is very concerning because things are getting much more complicated. We have Russians. Russians were always close with Greek Cypriots. It's not a new phenomenon. They came in 90s as well. However, in the last decade, they have grown their influence. We have a lot of Russians in Cyprus on both sides, not only in the south or in the north, on both sides. They work, they buy properties, they build their own businesses and everything. There are strong concerns about how much Russian influence is on the political side, especially in the Greek Cypriot community. And there are significant concerns about corruption, especially in the Greek Cypriot community. And when it comes to Israelis, we have the similar kind of concern on both sides, because Israelis, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, they have bought a lot of properties across the island, both north and south, and this is a growing trend. Many Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots are kind of alarmed about this, what we're going to do this issue, because their influence is also growing in the island. And we know that the Republic of Cyprus especially has very good connections and collaboration with Israel at the moment. And about Russia, they had to follow the EU sanctions on Russia as well, for sure. I mean, surely. But they kind of wanted to reduce the sanctions in the beginning, but then when they realized they cannot negotiate this further with the EU, they had to follow. But it still doesn't change the fact that for Russians, it's Cyprus, coming to Cyprus, building a business there and everything is way easier than other EU countries, for sure. So Cyprus has also made a lot of different tax arrangements to attract this sort of international investment. So they're in a more advantageous situation. I cannot say how much influence they have at the moment, but I mean, I think they definitely have some sort of influence on the politicians, especially in the south, in the Greek Cypriot side. I say the same for Israel as well. So these two, I think, should be looked after and monitored together as a recent challenge for Cyprus.
Additional question: on what level are today's relationships between Cyprus, both sides, and Israel?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, interestingly, we don't know if it's a part of a plan or not. As I said, Israelis, through development agencies and everything, they have got increasingly properties on both sides of the island. They bought a lot of different properties, they put a lot of money. From the north, I can tell you, in some regions, they paid the double price to get the land. In the south as well, they have a lot of money, so they very quickly increase their influence on the lands and in the societal level, which is kind of surprising. What kind of on the state level that they have? So with the Turkish Cypriot side, because of the current situation in Gaza, Turkey is firmly supportive of Gaza and Palestine. So Turkish Cypriots on the diplomatic level, they don't engage with Israelis. But on the societal level, we have increasing number of Israeli landowners in the north. In the south, whereas the Republic of Cyprus have been building this military cooperation with Israel some years before. And still today, they are collaborating. Still today, regardless of all what is all going on, and regardless of the pressure in the society, the Republic of Cyprus leadership continues its collaboration, including its military collaboration with Israel. And when Iran attacked Israel a few months ago, for instance, 30,000 Israelis came to Cyprus in a few days. And this is a very big number for a small island. So, and many people in the communities in both sides were like, what's happening? So I think the Republic of Cyprus is definitely interested in maintaining a relationship with Israel because they have military security concerns in the region, Republic of Cyprus. They're not a NATO member. They don't have a strong army. The EU doesn't give that sort of a protection at the moment. So they look for some sort of protection in the region, and Israel is the ally for them. But on the societal level, I can say that people are not happy with this, like on both sides.
One very, very nice comment from Vedernik. I feel both for Greek Cypriots and Turk Cypriots. Hope in the near future you guys will find a mutually acceptable solution and live well together. So this is probably the best ending of such a discussion. Still, to keep the hope, to keep the faith in peaceful future for Cyprus. Professor Chris Kostov, would you like to comment and ask something?
Oh, that was a very, very nice, nice interview and discussion. Thank you very much for your time, Fezile, and all the best with your research work.
Thank you very much.
Dear friends, that was episode 253. of Corridor 8 podcast. Hopefully, we will meet together in our next episode on Sunday, and we will discuss the unification from 1885. See you.